One of the things I always remember is at the Plaza of Nations, every nation that wanted to could have an evening devoted to a cultural event. I can remember the British, the Americans, France putting on just incredible shows, and it's just amazing.
After the fair, I found that people knew where Vancouver was a lot more than they did prior to Expo 86. And then, of course, it gave us a big boost in the tourist business.
It was also, in a sense, a catalytic event that some opposed, and yet I would argue ultimately transformed the province. My partner and I used to head down here pretty well daily. We would meet at Expo and have dinner here and go for a walk. Expo was one of the highlights of my entire life. This would have actually been tidal flats before the railway arrived, but then the CPR decided in 1887 they wanted to create their rail yards here, so they started filling in False Creek. Then, in the 1970s, the provincial government approached Canadian Pacific Railways and said, well, now that you're moving your railway yard out to the suburbs, what we'd like to do is purchase the land and put a World's Fair here. So it's gone through a lot of transformations in about 120 years. Expo ran from about Granville Bridge all the way over to almost Pender Street and over to Quebec. And it actually rounded the bay, and where you see the old Science World deck, you had a pavilion there just around the corner.
The Premier decided to go ahead and put this fair on because we had a recession going on, and we had a very high unemployment rate, and things were not good in the early 80s.
So the province stepped in and started an array of initiatives in terms of building infrastructure. Of course, they built SkyTrain, they built the Coquihalla Highway. Because what happened is that Vancouver and British Columbia were a bit of a backwater in a corner of the world that wasn't necessarily high on people's radar. But then there was this international advertising campaign encouraging people to come and visit Vancouver.
Fair has a very high educational component to it. But having said all that it's important to make it fun doing that. And I think that's one of the things that we did accomplish at the Expo 86 was that we wound up having a fun event. At the same time, you taught people had the ability to learn as well.
The provincial government took the leadership to purchase the site and then sold it off all in one piece. I think it made it much easier for us to get an array of waterfront parks. What we saw was that an increased interest in living downtown. There were also plans being prepared before, during, after Expo for the development of these lands. We began to see high-rises going up in the area between Burrard Street and Homer Street. If anything, the economy began to take off again. We've gone from about 45,000 people living downtown. Now we're closing in on 100,000 people, and that's in a remarkably short period. That's in about 20 years.
one of the big things that we got out of Expo 86 was a sense of pride, and the people took ownership of the fair, and it turned out, by and large, people liked it.
It was a very exciting time to be in Vancouver. We really felt, wow, we've gone from being kind of a bit of a quiet backwater here to a city that's got a real buzz. Expo came along and we felt good about ourselves again.